Okay, hey coworkers. I am going to talk to you today about how I attempt to incorporate the EAM of GLEAM in my classroom, so making things engagement, affirming, and meaningful to my students, which is really hard to do in a math classroom where they don't really want to learn it. These are just kind of some thoughts from my brain. This is not an end-all be-all list or anything, and if anyone wants to talk to me more about this, I am interested in it, so I would love questions or anything like that. One of the first things I think you have to think about if you are trying to have students engage with different tasks or strategies is like what you are going to do as a teacher to like get your students ready for those strategies. And I don't mean in terms of like your curriculum, so I'm not saying like prep them with math skills and things like that, but prep them with whatever interpersonal or like social emotional skill or mindset they need to be in order for this activity to go successfully. So a few examples, one from class today, it's March 7th, Jersey Day. Anyway, one example from class today is I noticed students were really struggling with graphing. They're mixing up their X and their Y's, they're mixing up their negatives and positives. Some of them are great, some of them not so hot. And so before we took our quiz today, I just asked students for a second, I asked them to just reflect on their own ability when it comes to graphing. And I was like, you don't have to say it out loud to anyone, you can keep it to yourself. But how do you think you are when it comes to graphing? And what I mean by that is, I would say that you are a pretty excellent grapher if you rarely mix up your X and Y coordinates, you rarely mix up your negatives and positives. When you plot points, it's usually correct the first time, you don't have to erase very frequently. You're probably not very skilled in graphing if you are doing the opposite of that, so mixing up X's and Y's, negatives and positives. If I have to come to you and you have to correct your points pretty frequently, you're probably not doing so hot. So just like putting that in their mindset, and I asked them to rank themselves a 1, 2, or 3. And I made sure that I said to them, like, when ranking yourself a 1, 2, or 3, like this is not a judgment on your own character or your own intelligence, it's just where you're at right now, and we're gonna practice today to help you grow from wherever you are right now. And so if you ranked yourself a 1, I need you to come grab this worksheet that has a 1 on it, a 2, grab the 2, a 3, grab the 3. And then once they had it in their hands in front of them, I also made sure to say, like, you are all practicing graphing. You are all practicing the same skill. So when I say like 1, 2, or 3, easy, medium, or hard, I'm not talking about the actual math skill. Like none of these are easier than the others in terms of graphing, but it was one of those mystery pictures where you graph the coordinates, connect them together, and then you don't know what it's gonna be till the end. And so I explained to them, like, the easier one, you're gonna see your picture a lot sooner than someone who's doing a harder graph. And just kind of things like that, like laying that foundation of like, this is not a judgment of you or your intelligence. I'm gonna ask you to do this thing. I need you to be honest with yourself, and just like emotionally preparing them for what they needed to do that day. And there were some students who they grabbed a 3 because they were like, I know what I'm doing. And then when they got to it, they realized, oh, I actually need more help. And it just kind of went pretty smoothly. Another example that I have for you is talking about group work. I feel like a lot of us all the time are talking about how to group students, like problems with grouping students. Like I can get them in a group, but they won't talk to each other. I know the other day I was talking to another staff member about if there's a student who's really anxious or shy and they want to sit in the corner and not participate with their group, like how to get that student engaged. And again, I'm not perfect by any means, but a couple of things to think about is like, how are you emotionally preparing students to work in the groups, but also to form the groups? So some examples of that would be like, you obviously need to have like some way to structure them and put them together in a group. You should have a structure for who's gonna talk first. A lot of times I'll do who's the tallest in your group, who has the longest hair, whatever. But beyond that, emotionally preparing them for it, I talk to my students a lot about brain science and how their adolescent brain is growing. And part of that is their social interactions with each other, and that some people are more prepared for social interactions than others. And so taking a second to just have them think like, how would you want to be celebrated if someone else found out they were your partner? Like take a second and like on the count of 3, celebrate how you would want to be celebrated if someone found out you were their partner. So like 1, 2, 3, and like, yeah, frick yeah, awesome, whatever, yes, let's go, whatever it is, right? And like practice that, and then like, okay, you are about to get a new partner, or maybe you already like have your strategy for getting your partner or whatever. Like when you figure out who your partner is, you should make them feel like that. The opposite of that is awful, right? No one wants to, as soon as they realize they're your partner, like you're like, ooh, can I work with so-and-so instead? Or, oh my gosh, like that's just not gonna work. And then also I think like, it's kind of case by case, but when we have problems of like students are in a group and they're not talking and you just like can't get them to talk, they're not following that structure or whatever, and you're like, dang it, I really, really, really need to teach the equation of a circle today. Like, let's go, figure this out, let's do it. Trying to force that curriculum part, it's not gonna happen until you address some of those other social things. And so like pausing for a second and just saying like, why is it important that you talk to each other in a group? Why is it important that you don't only talk to your friends every single time? Like, why do you think I decided to do random groups today? And just like giving students a break from the curriculum to really process like what's happening socially around them, I think is really meaningful, because then they're gonna say things like, it's important to hear other people's perspective, or like, we shouldn't just work with our friends all the time. Or maybe they'll say, because I talk to my friend too much and I'm off task. Like, whatever they say, but leveraging that to then like get back to the task at hand. Like, okay, it's important for you to hear other perspectives. That's why you're in these groups today. You're not going to hear other perspectives unless you're talking. I don't care if you're right or wrong, but I need you to participate. Whoever has the longest hair, I really need you to talk first. And if you have nothing to say, maybe own up to your group mates and say like, I really thought about this and I don't know that I have an answer, but I'm listening to yours. Like, I don't love when students like opt out, but I will kind of give them like a sentence to say if they truly have nothing on their paper, as a way to like let them gain footing back into their group. The other part I think that's really important with that, camera's gonna follow me now, is to like use our student agreements. I know that sounds literally so cheesy, but like to use our student agreements to like leverage some of that. So for the example with group work, right? Like number 8, be willing to give and accept constructive feedback. I talk to my students a lot about how mathematicians share their ideas and get feedback from other mathematicians. I'm training them how to be a mathematician in here. And so to follow that student agreement and be willing to give and get constructive feedback is really important. And then I also take some time to talk about what is constructive feedback. And it's not a judgment or like anything on someone's character. Like if someone points out a mistake you made, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you made a mistake. And that's like valuable to hear. And then also maybe just like having that growth mindset, like you always sit by your friend and today you're gonna push yourself to grow and not sit by that friend today. So just like a few things like that. I know that when students like ask questions, or if they ask me like, can you go back a PowerPoint slide, or can you, we were watching a video the other day and a student asked if I would rewind it 30 seconds again. Like that gave me a really good opportunity to point out, advocate for myself to the best of my ability, and then respectfully communicate my needs to the best of my ability. And I know that that seems like a really small moment, but like to praise a student for that in front of a whole class, it communicates that like that's the expectation. Like I should be raising my hand when I need help, not sitting there and getting on my phone. Like I should be maybe turning to the person next to me and asking them like, what page are we on? Like that's communicating my needs to the best of my ability. So little things like that can really improve classroom culture and like help lower anxiety when it comes to like practicing some of these things.